The day Carter signed the adoption papers in the sleek downtown Los Angeles law office, his hands trembled with a fragile kind of hope he had not felt in years. After losing his parents in a car accident and watching every blood relative slam the door in his face once they learned he was gay, this wealthy Thompson family had stepped forward with open arms, promising him the unconditional love and belonging he had always craved. "You're one of us now, son, Mr. Thompson had said, clapping him on the shoulder with genuine warmth while Mrs. Thompson wiped away a tear. Carter, 24 and still raw from rejection, believed every word. Julian, their 28-year-old son, waited outside the office in a crisp white button-down that caught the California sun. Tall, broad-shouldered, with kind hazel eyes and a smile that seemed to carry its own light. He pulled Carter into a quick, firm hug the moment the papers were notarized. "Welcome to the family, Carter. Really. I've been looking forward to having a brother." The word brother landed softly, yet something electric passed between them in that brief contact, something Carter immediately pushed down. This was his new life, his fresh start. He could not let old feelings ruin it before it even began. The drive to the Thompson mansion in the Hollywood Hills felt like entering another world. Palm trees lined the winding roads, and the house itself rose like a modern dream. Glass walls, infinity pools sparkling under the afternoon sky, and the faint scent of jasmine drifting from the garden. Mrs. Thompson showed Carter to his room, a spacious suite with floor-to-ceiling windows overlooking the city. "We want you to feel completely at home," she said, placing a set of house keys in his palm. "No more struggling alone. That's our promise." Carter nodded, throat tight, fighting the urge to cry. For the first time since the funeral, he let himself imagine holidays, Sunday dinners, someone to call when life got heavy. That first evening unfolded like a movie scene. Julian grilled steaks on the patio while Mr. Thompson poured wine and asked Carter about his art. "Julian told us you're talented," he said. Carter blushed, explaining his small freelance graphic design gigs and the paintings he created late at night. Julian listened intently, eyes never leaving Carter's face, nodding at every detail as if it mattered. When their fingers brushed passing the salad bowl, Carter felt the same spark from earlier and quickly looked away. He reminded himself again, brothers now. Family. Safe. Later, after the Thompsons retired, Julian and Carter stayed up talking on the balcony. Julian shared stories of his marketing firm downtown, the pressure of being the only son, the quiet loneliness of growing up in a house that always felt a little too perfect. Carter opened up about the years of hiding who he was, the friends who drifted away, the nights he wondered if he would ever belong anywhere. Julian's voice softened. "You belong here. I promise." The words wrapped around Carter like a blanket, and for a moment the city lights below blurred through unshed tears. By the time Carter climbed into bed that night, exhaustion and gratitude mixed inside him. He stared at the ceiling, replaying Julian's smile, the easy way they laughed, the way Julian had remembered every small detail Carter mentioned. A dangerous warmth bloomed in his chest, one he tried to smother. This family had saved him. He would not repay them by developing feelings for the one person he was now supposed to see as a brother. Yet as sleep pulled him under, Carter could not shake the quiet fear that the promise of love might be harder to keep than anyone realized. The next weeks settled into a gentle rhythm that felt almost too good to be true. Mornings Carter worked at the small desk in his room, sketching logos for local clients while the house filled with sunlight. Julian left early for the office but always left a note, coffee in the kitchen, or a quick text asking how the latest project was going. Evenings they cooked together or watched movies in the home theater, shoulders touching on the wide couch. Mr. and Mrs. Thompson traveled often for business, leaving the two men to bond in the big house. Carter started to relax, letting himself believe the adoption had truly given him a forever family. One Saturday afternoon, Julian dragged Carter to a hiking trail in Griffith Park. The city spread out below them in a glittering haze as they climbed, sweat soaking their shirts. At the summit, Julian handed Carter a water bottle, their fingers lingering a second too long. You know, Julian said quietly, gazing at the view, I never had anyone I could just be myself with. Not really. Until you showed up. Carter's heart stuttered. He wanted to ask what Julian meant, but fear clamped his mouth shut. Instead he smiled and changed the subject to the sunset painting the sky orange. Back home that night, while Julian showered, Carter stood in the hallway staring at the closed bathroom door. Steam slipped out beneath it, carrying the faint scent of Julian's cedarwood soap. Carter pressed his forehead to the wall, whispering to himself, Stop. He's your brother now. This family gave you everything. But the words felt hollow against the growing pull he could no longer ignore. Weeks turned into months, and the easy camaraderie between Carter and Julian deepened into something neither of them named. They finished each other's sentences at dinner, knew exactly how the other took their coffee, and shared late-night talks that stretched until the city lights dimmed. Carter's art flourished. He even sold a painting to one of Julian's clients after Julian insisted on showing the piece around the office. You have real talent, Julian told him one evening, eyes shining with pride. Don't ever doubt that again. The praise landed like sunlight after years of darkness, and Carter felt himself blooming in ways he had never allowed before. Yet the more comfortable he grew, the harder it became to ignore the quiet tension humming between them. A lingering glance across the kitchen island, a hand on the small of the back while passing in the hallway, the way Julian's laugh made Carter's pulse race. One rainy Tuesday night, they sat on the couch watching an old black and white film, a blanket shared between them. When a romantic scene played out on screen, Julian shifted closer, their thighs brushing. Neither moved away. The air thickened until Carter could barely breathe. He stood abruptly, mumbling something about needing water, and fled to the kitchen. Leaning against the counter, he gripped the edge until his knuckles whitened. He's family, he repeated like a mantra. You cannot ruin this. Julian found him there minutes later, concern etched on his face. Hey, you okay? His voice was soft, almost tender. Carter forced a smile and nodded, but Julian stepped closer, searching his eyes. You can talk to me. About anything. I meant what I said on the hike. You're not alone anymore. The sincerity in those words cracked something open inside Carter. For the first time he let himself wonder if Julian felt the same pull, the same terrifying hope. The following weekend, the Thompsons hosted a charity gala at the house. Carter stood awkwardly in a rented tuxedo, watching Julian work the room with effortless charm. When Julian caught his eye across the crowded living room and smiled just for him, Carter's stomach flipped. Later, after the guests left and the parents had gone to bed, Julian loosened his tie and poured them both a glass of scotch. They sat on the patio under string lights, the city humming far below. Tonight was exhausting, Julian admitted, rolling his shoulders. But having you here made it bearable. Carter's throat tightened. The words slipped out before he could stop them. I don't know what I'd do without you, Julian. You and your parents, you saved me. Julian set his glass down and turned fully toward him. The string lights cast soft shadows across his face, highlighting the earnest set of his jaw. Carter, I need to tell you something. His voice dropped, vulnerable in a way Carter had never heard. From the moment you walked through that door, I felt different. Like something clicked into place. I know we're supposed to be brothers now, but what I feel isn't brotherly. Not even close. Time seemed to slow. Carter's heart hammered so loudly, he was sure Julian could hear it. He searched Julian's face for any sign of a joke, but found only raw honesty and the same longing that had been haunting him for weeks. Julian, he whispered, afraid to hope. Julian reached out, fingers brushing Carter's cheek with heartbreaking gentleness. I'm scared too, he said. But I can't keep pretending. In the quiet that followed, Carter made a choice that would change everything. He leaned in, closing the small distance between them, and their lips met in the softest, most tentative kiss either had ever known. No fireworks, no dramatic music. Just two men who had both been lonely for too long finally finding home in each other. When they pulled apart, foreheads resting together, Julian smiled shakily. We'll figure this out. Together. Carter nodded, tears slipping free. For the first time in years he felt truly seen, truly wanted, and the promise of love the Thompsons had given him suddenly felt even more precious, and infinitely more fragile. The weeks after that first kiss passed in a haze of stolen moments and careful secrecy. They kept everything hidden behind closed doors and whispered conversations after the Thompsons went to bed. A quick kiss in the hallway when the house was empty, fingers intertwined under the dinner table, late-night talks where they mapped out dreams for a future they could not yet claim publicly. Carter's art took on new life. He painted pieces filled with hidden symbols of connection. Two silhouettes against the city skyline, hands reaching through shadows. Julian noticed and hung one in his office, claiming it was inspiration, yet the secrecy weighed on them both. Carter struggled with guilt every time Mrs. Thompson hugged him and called him son. "You've brought so much joy to this house," she would say, unaware of the truth blooming right under her roof. Julian fought his own battles, torn between the love he felt for Carter and the fear of disappointing the parents who had sacrificed everything for his success. "They mean well," he told Carter one night, voice heavy, "but they've always had very specific ideas about what my life should look like." Carter understood. He had lived with those same expectations his whole life, until they shattered him. One afternoon, while the Thompsons were away for a weekend conference, Julian surprised Carter with a picnic at the beach in Malibu. They spread a blanket on the sand, ate sandwiches, and watched the waves roll in. For a few precious hours they allowed themselves to be just two men in love. No roles, no secrets, no fear. Julian traced patterns on Carter's palm and said quietly, "I never thought I'd get to have this. Someone who sees all of me and stays." Carter leaned into him, the ocean breeze carrying away some of the weight. "I'm not going anywhere," he promised. In that moment the future felt possible, even bright. But reality crept back the moment they returned home. A text from Mrs. Thompson announced they would be hosting a family friend for dinner the next evening. Someone who had known Julian since childhood. The pressure to perform as brothers settled over them like a heavy cloak. Carter lay awake that night staring at the ceiling, heart aching with the knowledge that every day they hid made the truth more dangerous. Yet every time he looked at Julian, the love that had grown between them felt worth every risk. He only hoped the family who had promised him forever would understand when the time came to tell them. The dinner with the old family friend went smoothly on the surface. Carter played his role perfectly, polite, grateful adopted son, laughing at the right moments and praising Julian's business achievements. But beneath the table their ankles stayed locked together, a silent tether keeping them grounded. When the guest finally left, Julian pulled Carter into the pantry for a stolen kiss that tasted of relief and desperation. "I hate this," Julian whispered against his lips. "Pretending you're just my brother when you're everything." Carter cupped Julian's face, heart breaking at the pain in his voice. "We'll find the right moment. I promise." Life continued its careful dance. Carter landed a small gallery show downtown, and Julian insisted on attending opening night despite the risk of being seen together. They arrived separately, but throughout the evening Julian's proud gaze never left Carter. When a critic praised one of the paintings, the one with two silhouettes, Carter caught Julian's eye across the room and felt a surge of joy so pure it almost hurt. Later, back at the house, they celebrated quietly with takeout on the balcony. Julian raised his glass. "To the man who makes every day feel like coming home." Carter clinked his glass, tears threatening again. He had never imagined love could feel this safe and this terrifying at the same time. Yet cracks began to appear. Julian's mother started dropping hints about setting him up with nice girls from good families. Mr. Thompson mentioned expanding the business and needing Julian to project the right image. Each comment landed like a stone in Carter's stomach. He watched Julian force smiles and change the subject, and the guilt grew heavier. One evening, after another awkward conversation with his parents, Julian found Carter in the studio and collapsed onto the couch beside him. "I don't know how much longer I can keep lying to them," he admitted, voice cracking. Carter pulled him close, stroking his hair. "We'll face it together. Whatever happens, you're not alone." The first real misunderstanding came from an unexpected source. Marcus, one of Julian's college friends who had moved back to LA, dropped by unannounced one Saturday. He caught the tail end of a quiet moment between Carter and Julian in the kitchen. Nothing overt, just a shared smile and lingering eye contact. Marcus raised an eyebrow but said nothing then. Later, over beers on the patio, he pulled Julian aside. "Dude, what's going on with you and the new brother? You two look close." Julian laughed it off, claiming they had bonded quickly, but the seed of doubt was planted. That night he told Carter what Marcus had said, worry etching lines around his eyes. "If he suspects, how long before my parents do?" Carter's chest tightened. He wanted to reassure Julian, but the fear was real. They agreed to be even more careful. The pressure mounted when Carter's own past resurfaced. An old friend from his hometown reached out via social media, congratulating him on the adoption but warning that word had spread about his sexuality. "Just be careful," the message read. "Some families aren't as accepting as they seem." Carter deleted it quickly, but the words haunted him. He spent the next day painting furiously, channeling the anxiety onto canvas. Julian found him there, paint smudged on his cheek, and without a word pulled him into a tight embrace. "Whatever happens, I choose you," Julian murmured. Every single time. In that moment Carter believed him completely, yet doubt lingered like fog over the hills. Carter began waking in the middle of the night, heart racing with nightmares of the Thompsons throwing him out, of losing the only family he had left. Julian sensed the shift and started leaving small notes around the house. Simple reminders like, "You are wanted," and "This is real." The gestures helped, but Carter could not shake the growing sense that the promise of love was balancing on a knife's edge. He loved Julian with everything he had, but the fear of destroying the very family that had saved him kept him awake long after the house grew quiet. Tension reached a new level when Julian's ex-boyfriend, a sleek entertainment lawyer named Derek, reappeared at a company event Julian had to attend. Derek cornered him near the bar, voice dripping with old familiarity. "Heard you've got a new brother living with you. Cute. Hope you're not repeating old mistakes." Julian brushed him off, but Derek's knowing smirk lingered. That night he told Carter everything, pacing the bedroom floor. "He's jealous. He could make trouble." Carter tried to stay calm, but inside panic bloomed. The secret they had guarded so carefully suddenly felt exposed. The next morning Carter overheard Mrs. Thompson on the phone in the study, her voice low. "Yes, the adoption has been wonderful for our image. People love the charity angle. And Julian seems happier with a brother around. Keeps him focused." The casual calculation in her tone sent ice through Carter's veins. He backed away before she noticed him, but the words echoed. Was that all he was, an image boost? He pushed the thought down, telling himself he was overreacting. That weekend the family hosted a barbecue for neighbors and business associates. Carter helped Julian grill while the Thompsons mingled. Everything felt normal until Derek showed up uninvited, charming his way through the crowd. He made a point of pulling Carter aside near the pool. "You know, Julian has always had a type. Artistic, vulnerable types. Just watch yourself, he collects people." Carter's stomach dropped, but he kept his face neutral. Later he confronted Julian in the garage, voice shaking. "Is that what this is? Some pattern?" Julian's eyes widened in hurt. "No. God, no. Derek is bitter and lying. You're different. You're everything." They argued in hushed tones, the first real fight they had ever had, both terrified of what the other might say next. In the end Julian pulled Carter into a fierce hug. "I love you. That's not a pattern. That's my truth." The misunderstanding cleared, but the damage lingered. Carter threw himself into his art, creating darker pieces that reflected the growing storm inside him. Julian tried to bridge the gap with small gestures, surprise lunches, quiet affirmations, but the weight of secrecy pressed heavier every day. One night after the Thompsons had gone to bed, Carter stood at the study door, hand on the knob, debating whether to tell Julian about the overheard phone call. Before he could decide, Julian appeared behind him. "What's wrong?" he asked softly. Carter shook his head and kissed him instead, letting the physical closeness chase away the fear for a little while longer. Yet the cracks were widening. Marcus texted Julian a cryptic warning. "People are talking. Be smart." Julian deleted it, but the anxiety showed in his restless sleep. Carter lay awake beside him, heart aching with the knowledge that their love, beautiful as it was becoming a liability. He began to wonder if loving Julian meant he had to choose between the family that adopted him and the man who had become his entire world. The question haunted him through the long California nights, and for the first time since signing those papers, Carter felt truly afraid of what the future might cost. The breaking point arrived on a quiet Thursday evening. The Thompsons were out at a fundraiser, leaving the house to Carter and Julian. They cooked pasta together, laughing over spilled sauce, then curled up on the couch with a movie. Halfway through, Julian's hand found Carter's and stayed there. The simple touch felt like coming home. When the movie ended, they moved to the study to look at some of Carter's newer sketches. The room was warm, lit by a single lamp, and for a moment the world outside ceased to exist. Carter reached for a folder on the desk and accidentally knocked over a stack of papers. As he knelt to gather them, his eyes caught on a document half hidden beneath the pile. The heading read, "Adoption Agreement, Supplemental Notes." Heart-pounding, he scanned the page. The words blurred then sharpened with brutal clarity. The adoption had been fast-tracked for public image enhancement and family legacy protection. A handwritten note from Mr. Thompson mentioned keeping Julian on the right path and concerns about certain rumors. Another page listed tax benefits and charity write-offs tied directly to the adoption date. Carter's blood ran cold. This was not the unconditional love they had promised. This was calculated. Julian noticed his sudden stillness and knelt beside him. "What is it?" Carter handed him the papers without a word. As Julian read, his face drained of color. "They used you," he whispered, voice breaking, "to clean up my image, to make us look like the perfect American family while they suspected I was—" He couldn't finish. Carter's chest heaved with betrayal so sharp it stole his breath. The family that had saved him had never truly wanted him, just the optics. Before they could process the discovery, headlights swept across the driveway. The Thompsons were home early. Julian shoved the papers back and they hurried to the living room trying to look normal. But the air between them crackled with pain. When Mr. Thompson walked in and saw their tense faces, he frowned. "Everything all right, boys?" Julian opened his mouth, but Carter spoke first, voice steady despite the storm inside. "We found the supplemental notes. The real reason for the adoption." Silence crashed over the room. Mrs. Thompson's hand flew to her mouth. Mr. Thompson's face hardened. "Those are private documents. You had no right." Julian stepped forward, protective arm around Carter. "We had every right. You promised him love, not a PR stunt. And you've been using him to hide me, to hide who I am." The words hung heavy. Mrs. Thompson's eyes filled with tears that looked more like anger than sorrow. "We gave him a home. We gave him everything. And this is how you repay us? By turning our son against us with this lifestyle." The confrontation exploded. Accusations flew. Betrayal, ingratitude, selfishness. Mr. Thompson demanded Julian fix this and threatened to reverse the adoption. Carter stood frozen. The man who had finally found family now watching it shatter because of the very love that had healed him. Julian refused to back down. "I love him, and if that means losing everything else, then so be it." His voice never wavered, but Carter saw the heartbreak behind his eyes. That night the house felt like a war zone. Carter packed a small bag in his room, ready to leave rather than cause more damage. Julian found him and gently took the bag away. "You're not going anywhere. We face this together." They held each other in the dark, the earlier joy replaced by raw grief and fierce determination. The truth behind the door had ignited a fire that threatened to burn the entire family down, and Carter wondered if their love would survive the flames. The days that followed were a blur of slammed doors and tense silences. Mr. Thompson stopped speaking to them entirely, while Mrs. Thompson alternated between tearful pleas and icy disappointment. "We only wanted what was best," she repeated, as if that excused everything. Julian moved through the house like a ghost, attending work meetings by video and spending evenings with Carter in quiet solidarity. Carter's art became darker, more honest. Canvases filled with shattered promises and hands reaching through fire. He sold none of them. The gallery owner sensed the shift and asked gently if everything was okay. Carter could only nod. Friends noticed the change too. Marcus showed up one afternoon, having heard rumors, and listened without judgment while Julian explained the adoption papers. "That's messed up," Marcus said simply. "But you two look at each other like the rest of the world doesn't exist. That's real." His quiet support gave them strength. Yet the pressure mounted when Derek leaked a carefully worded social media post hinting at family drama in the Thompson household. The comments exploded with speculation. Julian's company board called an emergency meeting. Carter watched the man he loved fight battles on every front and felt helpless. One evening, after another painful argument with his parents, Julian found Carter on the balcony staring at the city lights. "I've been thinking," Julian said, voice raw. "Maybe I should ask them to reverse the adoption. Give you freedom. Let you find a family that actually wants you for you." Carter turned, eyes blazing. "No. You are my family. The papers were a lie, but what we built isn't. I'm not leaving you." The declaration hung between them, fierce and final. In that moment Carter realized his identity crisis had ended. Not because of the adoption, but because of the man standing in front of him. He was gay, he was loved, and he was finally strong enough to choose. Julian pulled him close, tears slipping free. "I don't deserve you." Carter kissed his forehead. "You deserve everything." They stood together as the sun set, the earlier betrayal still stinging but no longer defining them. The next morning Julian walked into his parents' study and calmly stated he would be moving out with Carter. The Thompsons protested, but Julian's quiet resolve silenced them. "I love this family," he said, "but I love him more. And real love doesn't come with conditions or hidden clauses." They found a small apartment downtown overlooking the same city that had once seemed so distant. Carter's art took on new light, hopeful pieces born from survival. Julian started his own marketing consultancy, free from his parents' shadow. They still saw the Thompsons occasionally, conversations careful and strained, but the door to healing remained cracked open. Carter and Julian built a life on truth instead of promises, learning that family could be chosen, not just inherited. Through every late-night talk and quiet morning coffee, their love grew deeper, steadier. Carter no longer woke in fear. Julian no longer hid. The journey from adopted son to equal partner had cost them nearly everything, yet given them something priceless, each other, fully and without shame. Is choosing authentic love over conditional family acceptance always the right path? True or false?